Welcome to another CEO Wisdom podcast. We have John Ashley with us today. He's the CEO at Auctus Surgical. It's a very interesting company that John's going to tell you a little bit more about today. He's a successful fractional CXO, board member, advisor, entrepreneur, speaker as well, MIT alumni. So, John, I'm glad to have you on. Tell us a bit more about yourself and what you're up to nowadays.
Hey, Charles, so nice to be here with you today. Thank you so much for that kind introduction. As you mentioned, I have my hands in a lot of different things. I've been focused on the medical device industry for most of my career, which has been to develop new technologies that get used in the hospital, in surgery to treat patients. These can range anywhere from heart catheters to, treat arrhythmias or valve problems inside the heart to orthopedic implants or orthopedic tools to treat joint problems or spine maladies. I've been fascinated by this field since I got started in it many decades ago. Love the ability to bring new technology out there that can help patients live longer lives, live more active lives. And throughout my career, I've kind of shifted the focus a little bit from, a lot of the technology in this space goes to treating much older patients, which is super important, keep them alive, having, more active lives, to, more middle-aged patients who have hurt themselves, with their weekend warrior activities and, get them into the OR and treat their orthopedic problems, their spine problems, get them back out there. Now I've shifted my focus to children. And I'm excited about having an impact on these that isn't just going to help them for, another decade or two or a few decades in the middle age. This is potential to help these kids where they're going to have a much better life for the next 70, 80 years after this treatment.
Got it. And how did you get started in that? That was like 10 years ago. You tell about, I guess, Maya's story on your LinkedIn. And how is what you're doing right now different than the existing solutions out there?
Yeah, thank you for asking that. So Maya is the daughter of one of my close MIT colleagues. He's actually a top oncologist. And I've known her since the day she was born. Very close to the family, seen her ballet performances and watched her skied with her and her family. But when Maya was 11, she was diagnosed with adolescent idiopathic scoliosis. So that's this lateral curve of the spine you can see here on this animation of a spine. It's a problem that affects about 2% of the children population around the globe, but at first, it's a small problem and there's not a treatment needed. But when Maya was 12, her curve got severe, about 45 degrees. And at that point, the standard approach, which you mentioned, is a fusion surgery. So that's the gold standard that happens to these kids, where they get cut open from their neck down to their hips, their skin and muscles flayed back. They get 2 titanium rods and dozens of screws put into their spine. And yes, that can pretty well straighten out their spine, but it also locks it in place, right? It's a fusion procedure. That whole section of their spine gets fused. So after this surgery, Maya couldn't do ballet anymore. The skiing got a little more sedentary. The competitive sports for a lot of these children is very much out of the question after this. She had to reinvent, her activities. She can turn her head and she can bend at the hips, but in her words, boy, any kind of spine movement would be a plus. She doesn't have it, right? In addition to those downsides, that I've explained, putting this hardware in your spine isn't without its own long-term risks. A lot of these screws break, they get pulled out. There's a lot of complications these patients see, not just after surgery, but for the rest of their lives. I spoke to a gentleman in New York just a couple months ago who had this surgery when he was 16 years old. Almost 40 years later, he got an infection in his spine because of that hardware. Very hard to treat infections and spinal infections. He had to go through a huge surgery to, remove all this hardware that had been there for decades, clean it out, treat the infection, and put new hardware in. So it's a lifetime sentence that these patients have signed up for when they go through it.
Right. And tell me about the technological side of things. What is this yellow wire that is going through?
So this is our technology. It's a dynamic tethering system. So the yellow is a ultra high molecular weight polyethylene fiber. So this is the same kind of material they use for body armor. They use it in the shipping industry because it's much stronger and lighter weight than steel. And it's got at this point, about a 30-year history of use in medicine. So they make sutures for orthopedic procedures like reattaching ligaments and tendons to the bone and to muscle. It's got a good history of use in medicine now. And we're taking this material and using it in this application to pull the spine straight. So we attach screws to the side of the spine, as you can see in this video animation here, and connect that yellow cord to those screws. Now, by attaching the screws to the side of the spine, the screw goes in one end of that vertebra and it comes out the other. And that makes that screw attachment twice as strong as the rods and screws that are going in from the back. It's called a bicortical placement, not to get too technical, but your bones are harder on the outside. So to go in and then out the other side creates a stronger purchase than just to go in from the back. They can't go in from the back and out the front because that's where your, aorta and your major blood vessels are. But we can go in from the side and out the other side. It's safe to do that. We attach this strong polymer to those screws, and that pulls the spine straight. But that's just the first part of this technology. In addition to doing that, we implant an adjuster. That's what pops up right now in this box. That adjuster holds one end of that yellow polymer, and that adjuster is magnetically powered. So this is a mechanical system that gets implanted in the patient. But after that surgery, these patients come back to see the doctor, just like any orthopedic surgery with an implant. They're coming back at 3 months. They're coming back at 9 months, a year. And for these kids, they come back until they're fully grown. And when they come back, they see the doctor in the office or clinic. The doctor asks them, how's it been going? He does an exam. He takes an x-ray of them standing up. And then, he's assessing with the screws and the rods. Did a screw break? What's your spine look like? Have you having any problems? With our system, they assess that and then say, we can straighten you a little bit more. Then they pick up a handheld device, hold it against the patient's back, and in a minute or so, tighten up the implant using magnetic coupling so they straighten the spine further. Or they can also loosen the device. If the child grew a lot and their spine's very straight and it's starting to curve the other direction, which happens with some non-adjustable products, the doctor can loosen it so the spine can keep growing. This child can get to their full height and have a straight spine. Right now, with the fusion and the rods and screws, whatever height, that length of their spine is when they get the surgery, that's it. Their arms and legs will keep growing, but their torso might not get any longer because their spine, a majority of it has been fused together.
And doesn't it damage the vertebrae or what's in between if you compress it artificially? Also, tell me about the cost of doing that and how many patients have you treated so far?
So the in between the vertebra are the discs, right? And certainly you don't want to damage the discs. What has been shown already in the clinic is that you can tether the long side of the spine, the long side of the curve, and pull it straighter. And you can do that and compress the discs and not damage them. What's been shown over a period of now, I believe there's good data over 3 years, maybe 5 years out, that the other shorter side of the spine, which still can have a bit of a curve, can grow so that the vertebra and the discs become a little bit more rectangular. This curved spine is because these vertebrae have developed and the discs have developed, and they're all wedge shaped. They're not rectangular. So by pulling on one side and preventing it from growing, the other side can grow, and these kids can potentially get more normal shaped spines such that they're going to be healthy and balanced without even any implant in place. With our device, we allow that growth to occur and allow the adjustment to be done to fine tune it to that patient. When they're fully grown, the doctor can have them in their office. They can release all the tension in the implant. So then they can have a fully moving spine. The doctor can monitor them, for the next 6 months, year. If they maintain that straight spine and nothing happens, then they don't even need the implant and they could have it taken out, right? Or they can just have an inert implant in their back, no loads on it. It's not going to fall apart because if there's no loads, there's no wear. It'll just be in there, getting covered with bone or cartilage or fibrous material, which happens to anything going into the body. But, they'll have a normal, healthy spine that's not being constrained with anything. Now, you asked how many patients we've done. That's a great question. We are what is considered a preclinical company, meaning we have not done any patients yet. We've done, various animal studies and cadaver studies. So we've seen the, applicability of our product, to the body. And we've actually tested this adjustability in animals after implanting it and shown that we can successfully do it. We've shown the product holds up over time when it's implanted. Right now, we're on track to do our first patient before the end of this year after we complete all that testing that I've mentioned. We've done most of it, but we're still, crossing all our I's and dotting all our T's. In this industry, normally what you like to say when you're working on one of these products is, I've done all the testing, we've got all the evidence, and I'm happy to go in to the hospital and use it on my grandmother. In this particular case, we have to get to that point where we're saying, I'm happy to use it on my own child.
Interesting. And what would be the cost for family to deploy this on their children via the benefits, right? Because I guess it's pretty crippling once you have this. What would be the cost and how much is covered by insurance as well?
Yeah. So this is a type of procedure that's covered by insurance. It's a very expensive procedure, and the data shows that the typical cost, in and out the door, is over $150,000. So this is an expensive surgery. It is covered by insurance.
I expected like 1 million when you said expensive.
Okay, well, 150,000 is expensive. That's the average cost. I mean, obviously, in some parts of the U.S., it'll be higher, in some parts a little lower. But what the advantage of this product, even for the insurance company, Charles, is because we can implant it through 1 centimeter incisions into the spine, and we're not trying to fuse the spine. When they put the rods and screws in, I mean, they've begun to make them a little bit less invasive, but the goal of that surgery is to fuse the spine. So they're not just putting the hardware in, they're stripping ligaments off of the vertebra. They're scraping the bones to get them to bleed, because the bleeding bone will grow and create this fusion. That in and of itself is a lot of trauma to the patient. It's typical with that procedure that these kids are in the hospital for 4, 5, 6 days before they go home, and then at home, they're recovering for, 3 or 4 weeks before they go back to school. With our approach, this minimally invasive approach and not fusion, they're going to be discharged from the hospital on the second day. They're going to be able to go back to school in a week. And, even when they go back to school, they can just go to PE class. With the fusion, there's, no PE class for 6 months till they're really fully healed. So that's a great benefit to the patient, but it also is a benefit to the insurance companies, the payers. A big part of the hospital cost is staying in that hospital for an extra 3 or 4 days. So we can save the insurance company money on this procedure because the overall hospital charges will be less.
Got it. What's next for you? You said that you're in a special category right now. Is that like some FDA approval stuff? How long can you hit like mainstream?
Yeah. So we have what's literally a 2-stage process with the FDA. We've been greasing the skids, as you could say, with the FDA, which is having lots of communications with them. It's called a pre-submission. So we've already had 5 pre-submissions with the FDA where we've educated them on our technology, gotten their feedback on what questions they've had. We've sent them a full clinical trial protocol to get their feedback on what they like, don't like, so that we know we're on the same page with them. And we've asked them what their biggest concerns are. So we've sent them the safety testing protocols to make sure they're happy with what we're going to do there. And those are all pre-submissions. So right now we're collecting all that data that we know the FDA wants to see, and we'll submit what's called an investigational device exemption, an IDE. So that's a full-on submission. The FDA will review all our data on the testing we've done and the clinical protocol a second time, and then give us approval to do a clinical trial in the US. So that's step 1, and we plan on getting that done this year so that we can start treating patients. Then we get into the clinical trial phase, and for this indication for children, we'll have to do a clinical trial with about 50 patients. We'll go around the US probably to 10 different hospitals and do these procedures, do the surgeries. That'll be the end of this year, the first half of next year. And then we have to follow those patients. But unlike a lot of clinical trials where you do the surgery and then you're just, getting an x-ray or sending a survey to the patient, how do you feel, what's your pain level? We'll actually do adjustments with these patients when they come back in and see the doctor in the clinic. We'll get the x-rays before the adjustment, after the adjustment. So we'll follow these patients for 2 years and then see what the 2-year data shows. And so the main outcome for these kids are how straight's their spine, what's the angle that they're curving, right? And we're anticipating that we're going to get all these kids to, +5, -10 degrees, right? Which has never been done before with any scoliosis clinical trial. They're usually in the I'm going to say, +15 to -25. Like that's the range, right? We're going to get them in a much better range and outcome. And then the additional measures that'll be important are, what are these complications? How many devices broke? How many reoperations had to occur? And again, we anticipate with this approach that we're going to have a much lower failure rate, many fewer complications than are being seen out there today with the products and the approaches, the surgeries these kids are having done to them.
Right. What's your priority as the CEO this year? Is it fundraising? Is it go to market? Like, where can you invest your energy to have the greatest impact?
Really, most of my focus is on fundraising. We're, a very capital efficient group because we've worked together before. We've brought other products to market with previous startups and exited those. So we are very capital efficient, but it still requires funding. And a lot of the work that gets done now is being done by third parties. So we've designed the product. We've done a lot of the initial testing in-house, but to send it into the FDA, it's a lot cleaner. We'll pass, their scrutiny. If we take our devices and send them to outside laboratories, So they can do the testing and write the reports, and we can send that into the FDA. The FDA knows the different groups that do this kind of testing, and they won't have to, worry about whether everything was done properly. But that costs more money. So that's my main focus right now. I'm always networking and showing the product to new surgeons. We have a fantastic group of advisors that have been helping us with, this product development and the testing, doing the animal studies and whatnot with us. But we always want to expand our network there and let more doctors know about what we're doing. Towards the second half of the year, I'll be trying to solidify which doctors, which surgeons and hospitals are going to do the clinical trial. And going forward from that, keep everybody updated on our results of the clinical study so that when we're ready to roll out, we've got customers that are excited to try the product.
Right. Very intriguing. Do you feel sometimes frustrated by the nature of the business and how slow the FDA is to approve life-changing technology that could be tested quicker and have a greater impact on a higher number of people? Do you think they're over restrictive, basically?
Well, in general, the FDA has an important job to do, and throughout my career, it's fluctuated where there's different time periods where the FDA is overly restrictive, and they're asking for additional testing and work from a startup company that isn't really adding value and is costing us money and time. Other times they're a little more cooperative and they see their mission as not just protecting the public but also getting them these new technologies. Right now we're in a little bit more of that latter case, and in particular with what Auctus Surgical is doing, we're focused on kids and bringing this product to market for them to have better solutions. So very recently, in just the last couple of years, the FDA has gotten on board a little bit with helping to companies and industry to get more products to children. They do recognize, and the industry recognizes it as well, that in general, healthcare is a huge market. There's a lot of innovation going on, but most of that innovation really is focused on adult problems. Just statistically, there's far more adults out there than there are children, and adults as they get older have far more problems than children do. So that's where the money has gone. But the FDA has recognized this as a problem, and what they've done to incentivize industry is they've opened up a pathway to get products to children quicker, and it's called the humanitarian device exemption pathway. It's been around for a long time, and it's kind of like people have heard sometimes of an orphan drug, right? An orphan drug is something that's super important, but it only applies to a small population. So there's certain rules that make it a little bit easier to develop that kind of a product. So the humanitarian device exemption is like that, but the original intent was it's only applying to areas where there's only 8,000 people in that population per year, right? So that's a very small problem. Scoliosis is a much bigger problem than 8,000 a year. But recently the FDA has decided they have the statutory authority, I guess is the technical term, to use this procedure which exists to allow products to get to kids faster. And so they have been doing that. There are a few products out there that have gotten this humanitarian device exemption for children that have more than 8,000 cases a year. Now, there's still requirements here. Once you get that approval, you can only do 8,000 kids with that commercial approval, and you have to collect more data, and then you can do more than 8,000. But that gets us jump started. So that is the pathway we're following. And once we're commercial and we're selling the product, we can continue to collect data until we get beyond this restricted area and resubmit to the FDA, and then we can do more than 8,000 a year. But I'd be thrilled to be helping 8,000 kids a year very quickly.
There you go. Well, John, thanks for being on. I think you're doing life-changing work. Where can people find out more about you and Auctus?
They're welcome to look at our website, www.auctussurgical.com, or they can email me at john@auctussurgical.com.
There you go. So that was John and Charles for another